this. Thank you.
Okay, I got the notification for the recording. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Growing Happy Families, Part 2, brought to you by the Arya Samaj Women's Forum. I'm Shruti Dolat. I'm an executive member at the Arya Samaj Women's Forum. We are so excited to have you join us today for Part 2 of our 2023 initiative, Growing Happy Families. Today's focus will be on recentering the elderly and how we can play our part in recognizing the role and valuable contribution that the elderly make in growing and sustaining happy families. Our guest speaker today is none other than Famida Shamam. Famida is the Chief Executive Officer at the Association for the Aged, TAFTA. Having spent 24 years in the aging sector, she has experience in many aspects of this field. Famida is currently studying towards her master's in social work with a focus on older persons. She also serves as a board member of the Commonwealth Association for the Aging and is the vice chairperson of the Global Aging Network. On behalf of the Arya Samaj Women's Forum and our chairperson, Dr. Sarila Ramklas, I extend a warm welcome to our presenter for the day and to you, our audience. As Famida takes us through her presentation, please may I ask you to write your questions in the chat box, which will be monitored by Kareem. Please note that the questions will be answered at the end of the session. Thank you. Over to you, Famida.
Namaste to everyone. What an absolute honor it is to be invited to speak to you on something that I feel really passionately about, and that's our elders and the role that they play in society and how they are positioned within the family. So I'm really excited to be here. I think, let me start off firstly for congratulating this organization. I was watching the promo video and I must say I'm so thoroughly impressed by creating the space, by the manner in which you created the space for dialogue and conversation around things that really are important to women and ultimately, I think, important to society as a whole. So well done to you guys. So today we're talking about elders and repositioning elders within the family, as a strategy towards growing happy families. And I think perhaps I want to start off with maybe 3 things that I want you to remember when I finish off my conversation with you. There are just 3 things I want you to take out from my conversation. I think the first thing is a reflection on the way we view older people. That's the first aspect. The second aspect is the manner in which older people view themselves. And the third then is to look at how do we bridge the gap between the possibility of what could be and where we are right now. So what are the opportunities for us to intervene? So those are the 3 things that I hope you're going to get out of my input today. So let's start off firstly in terms of how we view older people. And I think, as a society that's so focused on younger people and youth, we are obsessed with this idea that being young is the best times of our lives. And so we create this image in our minds and in the minds of others that growing old is about loss and it's a time of sadness and despair. And unfortunately, that's the narrative that prevails through everything that we do. So it changes the way we think about older people, but it also changes the way older people think about themselves. And I'll come back to how they think about themselves. But let's talk about how we view older people. And I must say, working at TAFTA for 24 years certainly has changed my view around aging. And I'm hoping that, I can plant a seed in the minds of all those who are here today so that you start thinking about aging differently. So let's start off with a reality check. Firstly, we talk about loss and we lament about things that have passed, and we talk about how society has changed and how older people are no longer respected the way they were respected. They don't hold the position that they have held in the past. So here's the reality check. change is the only constant. Society is going to change. People are going to change. The way we structure society is going to change. The challenge is how we embrace this change in such a way that is inclusive for older people. Now, I want to start off now by maybe just asking you to think about aging a little bit differently. Very often, we assume that our young days were the best days of our lives. What if I said to you that your young days was probably the worst of your life? The time when you were going to school, going to university. What if I said to you that wasn't the best time? And let me explain how I see this. Research has shown that people are living longer. So let's assume that the average person is going to live to the age of 90. So I'm going to segment their life into 3 stages. The first 30 years is about defining who you are. And that is why I think it wasn't the best time, because you're really pushing the boundaries. You're trying to identify with who you are. You study, you learn, you grow these friendships. So the first 30 years is about defining who you are. The next 30 years, in my mind, is about squirreling. And what this means is that we spend our adult life gathering stuff. We accumulate stuff. And it's not just physical things. It's about relationships and all the rest of it. So we spend this time really just squirreling and gathering too much of things, sometimes more than what we need. I mean, just open up my kitchen cupboard and you'll see there's far more there than I need. But we spend this time of our life squirreling and getting stuff. Now, the next 30 years, which is from 60 onwards, I'm proposing is probably the best time of your life. And I'll tell you where this comes from. It starts off with a conversation that I had with my former manager. We were having some issues with the department of Social Development. And so we were having a very robust conversation. And she said, Fim, don't worry about it. I'll say what I need to say. I'm 60 now, so I can say whatever I want to. And that got me thinking, why is it that you feel a certain freedom now that you're 60? And sort of that planted the seed. But I've seen this quite a lot with older people. They seem less bound by society's norms and standards, and they feel freedom to express what they need to express. I've heard it with my dad as well. It's like, I'm older now, I can say all these things, I can do this. So you sort of sometimes just throw caution to the wind. But when I say that after 60 is your best time, it's the time where you've accumulated all your knowledge, you've accumulated all the resources that you need, and you really, really can explore the way that you can give back to society. So your next 30 years is really about changing the world, and that seems a little bit out there, but really after 60 is the time when you really can make the impact on society and you can leave a legacy. And I've had these conversations with some of the older people, so I'm going to segue now back to how older people see themselves. When we keep on saying to older people that you are a burden to society, and growing old is not for sissies, so it's going to be really tough. When we keep on saying that to people, they start believing it, and it's self-fulfilling prophecies. They start behaving in that manner. But if you say to older people, this is the time for opportunity and for time for you to really give back, then you find that they start thinking about it differently. I'll just share with you a quick example. I don't want to go too long, but I want to share a quick example with you. A year ago, we started a pilot project called the Experience Incubator, and we were looking at entrepreneurship for older people. We spoke to quite a lot of people about this, and it's like, why do you want to start, entrepreneurship for older people? They're old now, and, why do they want to start a business? But we had this idea that giving dignity to people means that we give them access to the economy and we empower them. So over the last 12 months, we had a group of older people in their 60s and 70s who went through a very structured program for them to access the economy through their own businesses or ramping up what they were doing. On Friday, I attended the final session. And I must admit, it was probably one of the most inspiring moments of my life to hear older people in their 60s and 70s. I think the oldest was 75, who started up a business. She had her little flyers. She was telling me about all the things she was doing, but it was with such a sense of pride. And for every single one of the participants who had completed the course, what was so inspiring was that they were talking about how they're going to give back. The one person is doing wellness talks and all the rest of it, but she's talking about the impact she wants to make on society. Another person is talking about his woodwork profession and how he wants to pass that skill on to others. So I think when we take the time to understand that older people grow right until the end, then it changes the way we relate to them, and it also changes the way that they relate to us. So that's the second thing about having conversations with older people. I think if there are older people who are part of this conversation at this point in time, I really would like to challenge you around thinking about your own life and thinking about the legacy you want to leave. You can do what you would like to do. And I think it's so important for us to not feel that older people should be put into this little box and this is how they should behave and this is all that they should do. If you want to go sky jumping or parachuting, so be it. You get a medical checkup first, but go and do that. Let the experiences of life be something that you embrace every single day, because I firmly believe that if you wake up every morning knowing that your life has meaning, that you contribute meaningfully, and that you have purpose, it changes the way you see yourself and the way you position yourself within the family. So that comes to the third thing, and I'm mindful of time, so I'm gonna wrap up quickly. The third thing that I wanted you to think about was, what are the opportunities for how we reposition older people? And I think here it requires each of us to think differently about the way we engage. And it really is a call to action on a personal level, where traditionally older people were either protected on the one hand and not included because they were protected, and on the other hand, where they were isolated because they were not valued. We now need to rethink this conversation and rethink about the way we engage with older people. I'm going to use an example. My mom-in-law had a medical condition, and so after she had her op, she came to live with me for the first time ever. She stayed with me. She's 86 years old. I had to think about the manner in which I engage with her. And I realized that she wants to be part of everything that we're doing. And so I had to think about, okay, do I allow mom to be in the kitchen? And it's not really about allowing her, isn't it? It's really about saying, I'm creating space for you to express how you contribute to this family. I also found that when we have conversations with her about things that are troubling me, big things, small things, they really, really feel valued. So I think the call to action is really about asking each person to think about how they can include older people as part of everyday life and really make the concerted effort. The other as well is to think about all the things that different generations bring to the table. And part of what we should be thinking about is that technology, for example, is top of mind for younger people. Older people actually also like engaging with technology. I've had a few older people that are now TikTok grannies, so are getting really excited about TikTok and the possibilities of connecting and sharing all the things that they do. I have a few older people that's on Facebook as well. But it's very interesting when I have the conversations around Facebook, and I'll share with you. I had one of my elders tell me, I'm using a different name on Facebook because my son doesn't want me on Facebook. He thinks it's bad for me. And I said, okay, but why are you on Facebook? She said, she says to me, I have all these people that I can have conversations with. And, these are my friends and I can talk to them. And I said, well, maybe you must tell your son that this is important to you. But these are some of the things that I think as the sort of working generation, we need to be mindful of. We can't be all things to our older people. They need to develop new networks, and we need to be okay with that. Very often, it's not the older person that has the problem. We have the problem. And really, I want to leave you with that kind of thought. When you are engaging with older people, really see the value that they bring to the table. They have years and years of experience. They've been through far more than we can even imagine. And very often they'll come up with workable solutions if we are brave enough to actually ask the question. Okay, I know I was supposed to speak for 10 minutes and I've spoken for a little bit longer, so I do apologize. But I'm happy to take any questions if you have them. Right.
Thank you so much, Famida. That was such a lovely presentation, and I just want to thank you for drawing our attention to ageism, but more importantly, thank you for drawing our attention to what truly is the best part of your life, and that's 60 plus. Ladies and gentlemen, I also just want to welcome everybody that's joining us from Facebook. I'd now like to hand us over to Jay Sheila, who is going to take us through an interactive session on what it means to transition into a senior citizen.
Thank you, Shruti. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. Thank you, Famida. That was so inspiring. And you're absolutely correct. The elderly, the old person is part of the family unit. And if we see the family unit as a machine, and each person has a different part or a different part of the machine in order for the family to move forward, in order to be able to move in the same direction, we need certain things like communication and respect. But over a period of time, as Famida mentioned, we go through different life stages and we need to change. There's lots of transitions going on. We go through different milestones. And one of those important transitions is moving into old age, as we call it. There's so many issues associated with this. It impacts on the entire family. Each milestone actually involves change. Each part of the machine involves change so that we can grow as a family. But I want to encourage everyone now to please engage and participate and share with us, what are your experiences? For the young people, what are your experiences of living with or even having interaction with elderly people or the older person? And for everyone else, what is your experience of this transition into old age? So can I please think, I would like everyone to please participate. Okay, so to start, I have with me 4 very handsome young gentlemen. They're in their teens, but they wanted to share just a little bit or a point regarding what does it mean to have an elderly person in their lives?
Okay, so my grandparents have always been there for me my whole life. They've been there picking me up from school, supporting me, and they've always been there, like in general, just to give me love and stuff. So yeah.
Okay, Ethan?
Well, my grandparents, they make sure that I've been living my life to its fullest potential, and like they'll love me endlessly and with affection until like the day they die. And it's just so nice to see them, like, even though like with technology how it's increased and stuff, like they think it's like, oh well, what about technology? But it's also nice just to see that they want to like experience it and like grow upon it. Thank you.
Yes, so this is also what Famida was saying, that we have these TikTok grannies and they want to grow and they want to develop. And as young people, we can also work together because we can learn from each other. And part of giving back is, yes, we give back to our communities, but we start within our families, where we learn and from our experiences of the people in our lives. And remember, we're not just talking grandparents, just generally people with more experience who are older? Sika?
My grandma had raised me for 2 years of my life. She's protected me from danger and has been there in every milestone I've had from the first day of primary and the first day of high school.
Thank you. Josh.
So to me, the elderly are very important people to have in your life. The elderly are very wise and they are always in need to share information and to guide you on the right path so that you can be successful in life. And they are always there to help you. They spoil us like rotten. Thank you.
They spoil you like rotten. Okay, but also remember, as Femida pointed out, I just want to reiterate this point about the mindset. And sometimes we feel we need to fit in to what society says that the older person needs to be. We need to fit in. Sometimes we are our worst enemy because we have those negative thoughts that we can't do certain things, and we amaze ourselves of what we can do. And I think we can teach our young people, like we have here, we can teach them that, you know what, we can persevere. Please, can I have any other comments or interaction? Deepika, from your side? What's your take on this? Deepika.
Hi, I want to say that that really brought a tear to my eye, listening to these young children valuing older people. And in my family, the youngest always feel more comfortable speaking to the older people because they feel that they're not going to be judged. It's not a parent who's going to nag and say, why didn't you do something? Why didn't you accomplish something? And so, there's almost like a gap. The very young and the very old, they get on. And the ones in the middle, they kind of, they seem to have problems with the youngest and the oldest, but the two on the extreme side, they get on very well. And like I said, hearing these boys talk about the older people in their lives so lovingly is really, really touching. And it gives me hope. So when I'm old, I might just be loved more.
Absolutely. So Deepika, you touched on a valid point that it's the young and the old seem to get along much better than the in-between stage. Why is that? Why do you think that's so? Any ideas?
I think
is this because of the transition, where there's a lot of things that comes with this transition into old age, with regards to work, with regards to emotions, with regards to our health, with regards to a lot of things, there's and it also brings about change in the family dynamics as well. So you wanted to say something, Deepika? I cut you off.
I think that when you are in the middle stage of life, you're more prone to worrying about what society thinks. Are you living up to expectations? Are you, other people's opinions really matter. But when you're younger and older, it doesn't, because you're just free with who you are. And I think when you reach the middle stage of life, you actually become more insecure because you feel there's a standard you have to maintain. There are things you should have achieved at a certain age. And really, you are putting the pressure on yourself. And when you look at older people and you talk to them and you realize just how comfortable they are with themselves, it makes you wish that you could get that wisdom and that comfort at a much younger age.
Absolutely. Correct. Can we hear from someone else? Any other thoughts or comments regarding this?
Sorry, namaste. I'm Vasanti Bogul. It's a very, very interesting program. And yes, I'm 73 years old, and I think we need to embrace this change. You've got to believe in yourself. And I think whatever Deepika raised just now about the young and the old, I think the younger people do like to interact with the elderly because, I mean, the elderly have been through the experiences in life, and sometimes you can draw some wisdom from them as well. And as far as the seniority is concerned, we also can give back a lot to society. And I know that my late husband did as well, but he did it to his grandchildren. He was 76, but when his children grew up and even when his grandchildren were around, he was there. He taught them maths and he, gave them a lot of tuition in that. So in your own way, you can just add on and you can give back to the younger generation. And they do appreciate it, It's just, it's a beautiful place to be in. You just got to accept it and embrace it, as I say. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there is a comment on the chat box. It says that what age is the elderly? Some of us are senior citizens, approximately 65 years old. Are we in the middle stage? Please explain. And the other comment is the elderly also have more patience with children and give them more quality time. So what age is the elderly? That's a discussion that we had, but I think we said that it's between 60 and 65. When I think Deepika was talking about the middle stage, I think she was talking about the adult stage before you reach the age of 60. So Deepika, am I right? You were talking about that.
Yes, that's right.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
There's a comment on Facebook Live saying that from Pratima Balwant, inclusivity is extremely important for older people. So including them in conversations in the home and including them in activities that family does as well.
Yes, that is so important. And that's why the communication part is so important in growing happy families and maintaining and sustaining that and including them in the family activities. And sometimes I think we get guilty of not including them in all activities. So that's a very important point. I think there was a hand up. Was it Sandhya? Was your hand up?
Yes. Yes,
okay.
Namaste.
Yeah.
Namaste. Thank you for this very relevant discussion. I think you have mentioned that people are living longer lives, and as a result, we need to understand how do you embrace them in the family where they don't feel isolated, where they're still relevant in the family. And it's interesting when you were talking about the age, about the elderly, because there are people that are living who are 80 years. And at times I've seen in my experiences that people who are living older, who are in the 80s, and sometimes they are like just living their lives. It's like you're waiting to die, and it's a very terrible state to go through. And I know that I would not want to go through something like that. So it's how, with changing lifestyles, how do we prepare ourselves, and how do we prepare society to accommodate the elderly? It's one of the worst. It's one of the worst neglected areas, and it's the worst kind of service that is being provided for them. I think TAFTA is doing a fantastic job, but I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about larger society and families. Challenges of lifestyles, because lots of people have now moved to nuclear families. So what happens is with the elderly, they are left in homes and stuff. And it's a very difficult situation and a very sensitive subject to discuss. And I think this is a good start for us to have it. And I think that we should be exploring this a lot more, But I think there's two elements to it. One is how does the family look at it, and how does the individual who's aging, what is going through their mind, and how do they see themselves, and helping them to understand that, I mean, to me, 60 is not old anymore. 70 is not old. So the thing is that when you're looking at these issues, does it mean when you retire now, life comes to an end and you just sit at home? Or how do you interact with communities, especially because with our changes, people have moved far away from each other. Our contact is limited and stuff. I think something like this, where we have a forum for women, we also need to look at probably exploring how do we expand this to bring more aged people into these kind of conversations so they feel relevant and they feel part of society and families. Sorry, I can go on, but I'm just going to stop there.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think what you're saying is going on to the next part of the discussion, which Sarala is going to take over. But I think there are some comments with regards to the age. I think Pandita Arena wanted to comment on the age. Do you want to say something, Pandita?
Namaste, yes.
Namaste.
The last speaker spoke very nicely about we are now living in nuclear families. We used to live in communal families. And I just think like age, one of your speakers also, I think it was Pandita Bhogal, spoke about she's in her 70s. I know she's very much involved in community work. What we have not really thought about for the elderly is to prepare the mind so they don't get dementia or Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. We need to help them with that. And we also need to prepare ourselves. I'm 65 plus. That we need to prepare ourselves how we are going to be handled in society by our kids, like our finances have to be in order. We need to have a good mindset. We need to learn patience. We need to give to society and always be involved in something that if at any stage that we have to go back to live with our children, but majority of us are not living with kids at the moment. If we have to go and live with our children, that we must also be a help to them in some way. One is like, giving them some wisdom and how to live their lives. Religious aspects, we have to bring that in because our values are there. And the age thing does worry me, is like from what age do we become elderly? I would think from the 80s, because some people from 60 to the 80s are still mobile, they can drive, they talk well, they can WhatsApp, they can TikTok. So, we need to say the graceful age should be 80. I'm 65, I'm still driving, I'm still performing hawans, I'm still performing funerals. I still party, like the good parties. I've got a lot of friends. So, the age thing, we have a gap there. Am I elderly already or am I a senior?
So I'm going to end my my part with regards to this in terms of, I'm going to read out what Femida wrote in the chat. That part of changing the narrative is to think about the words that we use. So if we change the words from saying that someone is growing old to saying that we're evolving into the wise. Remember, the elderly doesn't mean that they're not self-sufficient. It doesn't mean that they can't do things. And that's what we're having this conversation to break down the prejudices and the stereotypes that we have. And I like that phrase, evolving into the wise. So that's what growing old is. It's about becoming wiser. And you're right, Femida is saying that we need to challenge our perceptions about the older person as well. So I'm going to hand you over back to Shruti for Sarala to continue with the next part of the session.
Namaste, everybody, again. Thank you so much to everybody for that very engaging discussion. I'm not going to take too much of your time because I don't want to break any momentum that we have going, but I am going to hand you over to Sarala, who's going to speak to us and facilitate a discussion on how the elderly find their purpose in aging.
All right, so thank you, Shruti, and namaste, and welcome to everybody on the call today. I'm so glad to see so many of you join us. And more especially, I'm so excited about the engagement that this particular topic has generated. So to my friend Famida, thank you. Thank you for setting the tone to this presentation. And I just want to take just respond to some of the points that were raised before I actually begin on my bit. In terms of this age of 65 and, does that make us old and all of that? Unfortunately, we seem to be dictated to by policies, by countries' policies on retirement, and those things tend to dictate how we think about ourselves and how society thinks about ourselves in terms of being young or old or retired. And many people at the age of 60 or 65 or whatever are really not at the point of retiring. I can tell you that because they're really high functioning and they have lots and lots of energy and still so much to give to their work life. So maybe that's another discussion for Mida, where we need to relook the retirement age and what government then proclaims to be the age for retirement. Maybe another call on that one. All right. So when Jay started her discussion, it was really to get from you to understand what was your experience of aging. How did you move to this new phase in our lives, right? And perhaps that's the one way in which we can look at us transitioning into what we call aging is how we shift from the different stages, and the shift then dictates how we experience this next stage of life, right? So remember, if we're very defined by the different by our activities in the different stages of life, and as we move into the 60s and above, we have then transitioned from a work life, right? And very much when we're at work, work defines us. But then what happens when we move into the beyond 60, the beyond 65? How then do we find a purpose for that stage of our lives? And this is the discussion that I'm wanting to hear from you. How did you find your purpose? And how then are you sharing this purpose with the rest of the community, not just your family, but with others in the community? And how then are we also creating spaces for intergenerational engagement, intergenerational conversation, so that we not just reclaim, but we recenter the aging person or the elderly into a meaningful role in society. And you would think, well, isn't that a given? Isn't that a given that older people should be the center of families? But unfortunately, there has been many research publications that show evidence that, in fact, many cultures have shifted this particular role and perception and importance of older people as being, the center of families and showing their importance. In fact, what has been shown is that importance to older people remains within the family, and that the general importance for older people is largely unrecognized. And that talks to our respect for older people and in terms of respect for people in general. Okay, this is not the way I intended. I really want to hear from you. So I'm just going to take the liberty of just asking people to comment, people that are on the call, just to tell me, how have you found this purpose in this next phase of your life? Mr. Binder Prasad, I see you on the call. Would you like to comment on this purpose that you have found in this stage of your life?
Namaste. Thank you for the invitation. I think I'm still finding my purpose in life because I look at every sunrise as a day of new discovery in how you can fulfill a meaningful role in society. And I think as long as we look at life as one of giving and sharing, then there is purpose. But when we feel that we have achieved and reached a pinnacle, then there's no more of a summit to rise to. The other thing I also feel in my personal capacity is that the parent generation is a generation that will provide for their children, educate their children, and ensure that their children follow an educational route that will give them success in life, and that their children will follow a path to be role models that mirror their own image, and that they must live the kind of lifestyle that would be in keeping with what parents expect, because parents put in a certain amount of into the upbringing of a child, and they expect to reach a certain level. Whereas the elder generation tend to look at moral values, cultural values, and how to live life rather than how to prepare for life. And I think there's a very great distinction there in living life and enjoying the moment. And at the same time, you will then prepare for the future. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Wow. That's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Binder Prasad. That was really great pearls of wisdom. Does anybody want to extend that comment? I'm also wanting to pick up on the comment from Sandhya, where she talked about how we prepare ourselves for aging, and that we spend a lot of time on financial planning, yes. But I want to extend that and also say a little bit more about how we forget that our health is beyond just having good financial health. That when we're looking at a holistic approach to aging, that we need to look at both our physical health and our social health, and that many research or many studies will actually will have pointed us in the direction that it is our social health that determines our the outcomes in terms of our physical lives. And that is why our social networks are so important as we age, and the need for us to actually create the social networks around a definite purpose. Okay, so I found that we have found that if you know, within our communities, we have these groups for women and for older people, which play a huge role in terms of maintaining our social engagement. And when we compare those to what's happening in old age homes, we also see the programs that the old age homes put together, simply because, well, not simply because, but clearly because they value and they understand the benefits of social engagement and its impact on physical health. Now, what I have seen myself in the community is that there seems to be a neglect from community with community dwelling elders in terms of extending that kind of engagement that we see that is sort of, has such great importance in old age homes. We don't see as much of that at the community level. So unless you physically find your place within a society or a committee for older people, we find that government itself has not done enough for community living adults in terms of preparing them for aging. And I think it's, I'm wanting to use this particular platform for us to shift the thinking in terms of how we prioritize the needs of our aging citizens, so that they don't go back to just being caregivers in their advanced years, because certainly that's what they what many people are relegated to just become, to becoming caregivers of grandchildren, and whilst yes, of course, in that engagement, you're still going to have a sharing of the wisdom and the sharing of the values and the sharing of the culture. But I'm sure that there are the needs of the older person that also need to be prioritized. So I'm wondering if anybody has a comment on how we can then create more opportunities for older persons to find a purpose beyond their work life as they age. Let's see. Anyone has a comment? Karuna, thank you for joining.
Namaste, Sarala. Namaste to everybody online. I think, Sarala, the question that you're asking affects everybody, because everybody ages. So the sooner we start thinking about what we're going to do around aging, young girls, get worried about how their body shape changes and what else happens to them, and aging gracefully is something important that we can teach. And the values that we learn in Hinduism is very important. But I think more important is all the sanskars that we perform, because these sanskars actually help you to understand the promotion that you have in society. Nobody gets demoted, as a child is born, you become an aunt, you become a grandparent, you become a mother, you become a father, you get promoted in life. And, if we have to link it back to, talk about evolving and talk about becoming wiser, then our sanskars are perfect for explaining all of this. But the important thing, I think, and I fully agree with you, that, people who retire from active work life, it is not their job to bring up grandchildren. They can spend time with grandchildren and enjoy that time, share their wisdom with grandchildren, but the responsibility for looking after children rests with parents. It is their job, their responsibility to do things. And often, because we live in a very, very commercial world, people actually save a little bit of money on getting an au pair or giving up their careers to bring up their children and look for support within the family network. And I think grandparents have very easily fitted into that kind of process. Now, we have an ashram in life which is called Vanaprast, which is for retired people And in the Arya Samaj, we've not really done much about it. So that is something we could think about and look at and see, because it actually will give a purpose to retired people, to older people. And then just to share, you know, I'm not too sure about the age limits. I feel as young as I feel, but you know, obviously having reached 60 and over 60, you end up becoming a mentor in life, whether you want to be a mentor or not. And in terms of my work situation, I find that, you know, there's a lot of people who come into the work situation, and you have to actually begin to play that mentoring role of training, imparting your skills, knowledge, and wisdom to people. So, you know, the transformation takes place very effectively. And of course, you know, over the years, you actually pick up a lot of things, and I've begun to really share a lot of my writings now that actually is there now for people to learn and use. But I think if a lot of us, and you know, Robin Pye in particular, being an educator, if they could play a mentoring role, some of the business people, if they could play a mentoring role, we will be doing a lot of good in the country. Thank you.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned this point on mentoring, because this really is something that I am so keen to talk about, right? And Robin Pye did mention that he mentioned the point about sharing our wisdom and sharing our knowledge and sharing our skills, and that then talks to this purpose of mentoring. And I think that in itself has a huge place to play in the lives of older persons, to transfer skills, to impart skills, and so that we actually, you know, I think there is a huge gap. You know, I'm in the higher education sector, and we see these very young people coming into higher education, but really coming into professions and coming into degree programs without having a clear understanding of where this will take them or what their ultimate goal ought to be. For them, it's just about finding a place. Yet within communities, we have older persons that have gone through this process of a particular study and have engaged in particular professions and have great experience and skill and wisdom. But then we just don't have a platform where they can actually share this, right? And I think that I'd like to propose that we should actually try and formalize a mentorship program or a platform for mentoring for our younger girls, well, not in particular girls, but just our younger persons. And we would like to invite people, not just professional people, but people who are skilled, just even from a hobbies perspective or a craft perspective, to come onto this platform so that we can then create this intergenerational conversation as another point of continuing the conversation, and also creating the platform for developing respect for older people and recentering again this idea of older people and the importance they have in our lives, and how we can actually grow from their own experiences. And I think you know, that then will also talk to us, giving both groups these opportunities to engage with each other and to see the meaning that each of these groups, you know, the younger and the old, bring to the table, both in terms of wisdom, in terms of skill, and just life experiences. I mean, that's where we learn best from. So I don't know if does anybody want to, does anybody have experience on how to create a platform for mentorship? I mean, not just taking somebody under your wing, but I really would like for us to formalize a platform for mentorship for younger people as a community initiative. And I think we can do this through our cultural groups, through our religious organizations, through any, it doesn't need to be centered in a particular space, but it's an idea that I'm sharing about creating a platform for intergenerational discussion and as a way of finding your purpose, really, as an older person, to find your purpose if you're looking for one. The other way around it is about, I cannot overemphasize the joy and the fulfillment we get from volunteering our services or just volunteering skills as another aspect of finding purpose. And so we're sort of linked with many NGOs and like CHOC and all of those NGOs who constantly are looking for volunteers. And we know that when we give of ourselves, then only do we truly give and feel fulfilled. And so therein is another possible opportunity to find one's purpose through volunteerism. So I don't know, does anybody else have any comments? Let's see.
Namaste, yes. Can I just come in here? My name is
Yes,
Dr.
Mr. Singh. Go ahead.
Dr. Hansraj Singh. I'm
Welcome.
listening to you. Yeah, I'm listening to you very, very carefully as to what you have to say. So my suggestion is that, you need to find a solution to recentering the elderly back in society. And that answers are clearly found in the Vedas. If one has read the Vedas and understood the Vedas, the answers is there. So how you find it and where it is, I cannot give it to you at this point in time. So the answer is in the Vedas. And prior to this, there was a discussion on the abused women. The answer is again in the Vedas. So it has to be found and analyzed, which I've done already, but I cannot give it to you again at this point in time. It must be taken and used, so that will find a solution to both the problems. And with this regards to this webinar, yes, again, there is a solution to recentering the elderly back in society, and it asks for a whole lot of research. In other words, it's just not straightforward. It asks for research to be conducted, and then your solution is there. Bring that together and you will solve this issue of recentering. I thank you very much. That is all.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for that contribution, Dr. Singh. It would be really great if you can leave us your contact details so we can continue this conversation with you. That we can also link up with our scholars in South Africa and beyond, so that we can make this a global initiative, because I don't think that it's particular to South Africa. The problem is not particular to South Africa. Karine, your hand's up.
Thank you, ma'am. I'd just like to address a few comments in the chat, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Ma'am Shimam saying that is a wonderful idea as to what you have proposed to us. And she has suggested that there is an organization called 50 Plus Skills. And if we would like to collaborate and have a discussion around this, it would definitely help the setup of the platform for mentorship. And Sandhya has also commented that she's happy to discuss and look at developing a plan of action for mentorship with a few members.
Oh,
so
that's
this
awesome.
is definitely a wonderful route to take on, and we can see that we have people who are willing to engage and collaborate.
Oh, that's just awesome. Thank you, Sandhya ji. Thank you very much. I really, we must engage. We must get this off the ground. And Famida, can you tell us a little bit more about the 50 Plus Skills Initiative?
Hi, okay. Yeah, so 50 Plus Skills was set up by a lady, her name is Linda Smith. She actually did she was part of the team that did the My School cards that I think many of us are familiar with. So she wanted to create a platform where people who have reached retirement age, she calls it refirement, not retirement, can still give back to society. So she's created a number of platforms for engagement. And she's such an inspirational person, and I've had many discussions with her. But on her platform, there is a portal where people can register their skills, and they can say, this is something I'm really good at, and then they match them up with a need. I know she's done some mentorship on a very formal level with some organizations as well, where you have younger people, like you said, within higher education, younger people that come in with certain educational qualifications, but may not necessarily have the sort of experiential the experience, and she brings up different people and matches them. So I think it's an interesting conversation to have, just in terms of whether you want to plug into what is, or whether you want to set it up within your organization. I think there's possibilities in terms of all the things that can be done. So if you're interested, I'll set up that conversation with you, Cyril, and we can take that forward. I just want to, if I have just 1 minute, I want to talk about.
Yes, no, please go ahead.
When we, as an organization that works with older people, a few years ago, we changed our focus in terms of how we respond to care needs. And generally, we sort of are very reactionary. We react to what we see. But going back to exactly what care and support means, we adopted an approach that is around person-centered care. But part of that says that the suffering in old age can be accounted for by 3 things, and that is boredom, loneliness, and helplessness. So you'll find very often that for many of the older people who come to us for care and support, these issues around boredom, loneliness, and helplessness is core to some of the suffering. And the issue around helplessness, the antidote to that is to give and receive care. So very often we assume we must care for older people, but there really is value in older people giving back. And it comes back to a lot of what people were saying, is that older people, even people who are in frail care, have something to give. And quickly, I'll share this conversation. I had this discussion with some caregivers, and it's like, oh, but how can somebody who I'm caring for give me anything? And we had a long conversation around it. And what we eventually came out with was the opportunity that an older person has given you is to really explore your humanity and your capacity to care. They gave you the opportunity to express that. So it really is about reframing how we see the value that older people give to us in our society. I wouldn't know that I have this capacity to care unless I was given the opportunity to do so. So, so that's the sort of antidote to helplessness. The antidote to loneliness is to create meaningful relationships. And this is the whole idea around investing in your social networks becomes so important. And the antidote to boredom is to include the spontaneity in everything that you do. When you think about things that make children happy, giving them an ice cream, or, just changing the routine, the same for older people as well. The whole idea around spontaneity and embracing life is so important. And I think one of the speakers spoke about, really just being grateful. And this attitude of gratitude is maybe something else that needs to be thought about as well. I'm going to stop too much.
No, not at all. Just fascinating, completely fascinating. I'm just going to, Karuna, before I see your hand. Michelle, I'm so glad that you've joined. Do you have a comment?
Thanks, Cirilla. Yeah, organizing this, I think it's a really good initiative. I joined a little bit late, so apologies for that. So I may have missed some of what was said. My comment is just around the fact that, you know, I think it's so important that older people get the opportunity to share what they know, because it seems like with this retirement age setup, it's almost like after 65, you can't do anything, which is so totally untrue. The only time they really appreciate someone over 65 is when they want to make them the president, because it seems that all our presidents
Yeah, that's right.
yes. So yeah, just to concur with all the other speakers, that there's a lot to be given, to be had from the experience, and we just need to find the platform for them to share it. So thank you for that. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, and thanks for joining. Karina?
Thank you, Cirilla. You know, having heard that last comment, I just want to share something.
Yeah.
I had the pleasure of working with Nelson Mandela in the first term of the democratic government in this country. And my word, you know, he was well over 80, but he was so energetic that those of us who were in government used to feel that we're not doing enough because of the way he gave leadership. So, you know, there's a lot of old people who can actually put a lot of energy into things, give a lot of inspiration. And I just wanted to suggest to the Women's Forum that this might be a very good opportunity. Your idea is an excellent idea. It might be a very good opportunity to awaken all of the older people in the Arya Samaj to actually be part of this mentoring program that you want to have. And, you know, we just relaunched the website. So, you know, the possibility of you utilizing the website for this kind of thing to attract people from all over the world, even, you know, to join in this program is there. But I think you'll need to really work out the granular details of what this program would be. And I'm happy to give you whatever support you need in it. Thank you.
No, thank you very much, Karina. I really appreciate that. But yes, and yes, we will definitely call upon you. But I'm making a public appeal for Sandhya to also join me on this initiative. I'd really appreciate working with Sandhya to get this mentorship program on the ground, off the ground, and to also and to just to remember that we work beyond the boundaries of the Arya Samaj. So it will not just, it's not confined to people in the Arya Samaj. So the mentorship program will extend beyond the boundaries of the Arya Samaj. So for whoever requires the mentorship and whoever is keen on being a mentor, we will definitely work towards creating that platform. And together with you, Famida, we look forward to also you know, engaging with you so that we bring the best possible expertise and skills from older persons down to the younger persons in the community. So are there any questions on Facebook? I think we're running out of time now. Any Shruti? Are there any? I'm sorry, I'm not looking at Facebook.
No, we're good. We're good for now. Karine, I did check with Karine. She said that we were all clear.
Yes, we were all clear. Just a comment from Sandhya. She said that she replied sure to your appeal, and she's happy to be on board with us.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, so back to you then, Shruti. Thank you very much for your time, participants.
Thank you, everybody. Before we wrap up quickly, I'm just going to hand you over to Varsha for just a quick summary and overview of our discussion today, and then I'll take over from there.
Thank you, Shruti. Wow, Cirilla, what an amazing, interesting discussion to challenge everybody's mindset regarding the elderly. So it's a very multifaceted approach that we will need to engage in, from the very, very younger members of the families to the older members of society. And we need to create meaningful relationships. We need to reframe how we see the value of older people, and we need to embrace life. And whilst we are doing that, we need to ensure that we are engaging older people in this as well. Communication is key. We need to ensure that having conversations with older people. Also, we need to ensure that older people are not marginalized and that we don't place stereotypes on them. Because if life has meaning, then older people also have a purpose. Traditionally, the elderly have been overprotected or undervalued. So how do we overcome this? Being elderly does not mean being unable to contribute, and our perceptions regarding senior citizens must be challenged. For families to be a well-oiled machine, all members must be valued. And when transitions from moving into old age occurs, it must be embraced as a milestone in life. The youngest and the oldest generations seem to be getting on better than the generation in between. So that perhaps means that the generation in between actually needs to introspect to see why this is happening and how they can overcome their own preconceived ideas of the elderly. And we are often defined by our jobs, and how do we transition from working, and how do we then find purpose, and how do we share this in the community? So part of that answer to that was perhaps finding joy and fulfillment through voluntary work, and making sure that we recognize that the younger and older bring different wisdom and skills to the table. The elderly share knowledge and impart skills. And I'm just going to end off by saying that exactly what Famida said, we need to change our mindset into thinking that we're not growing old, but evolving into the wise.
Thank you so much, Varsha. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Arya Samaj Women's Forum, I would like to express our immense gratitude to our speakers for accepting our invitation to speak today. Thank you so much. I would also like to take this opportunity to extend our gratitude towards the Arya Samaj administration crew, Radio Hind Vani, and to all of you who have shared our invitation. I'd also like to acknowledge the contribution of the ladies of the Arya Samaj Women's Forum Executive, and to our tech assistant, Divya, who assisted us today with all of the tech aspects of the event. Thank you to our wonderful audience for making the time to chat with us this morning, and thank you for being so interactive today. We wish you a wonderful weekend further. Before you leave this meeting, may I please ask you to complete the evaluation that will appear on your screen now. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a wonderful Sunday.
Shruti, are we done?
Yes, I'm just waiting for everybody to fill in the survey before we close the call.
Okay.
Okay, perfect. I think we're done.
All right, perfect.
Okay, namaste everybody. Let's close the
Namaste.
event.
Yes, thank you very much. Has Farida left us? She has. Okay.
She has.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies. I
Namaste.
think, yeah, namaste. Thank you, Shruti. You are great. You're just awesome. Thank you very much. And to all of you, Varsha, Kareen, Deepika, thank you very much. And Sunitha, thank you for Facebook. All right. Take care. Thank you. Bye.